Good morning, student. In our previous module, we have discussed about the news. What is news and why it is important. Now, while collecting a news, what sort of information or what sort of values you should be aware of. So, we are going to discuss about the news values. What is news values? So, news values in journalism. So, news values in journalism refers to the significant elements of newsworthiness. Journalist focuses on maintaining news values to increase newsworthiness. The news values in journalism are components that strongly affect newsworthiness. Therefore, it is also known as elements of newsworthiness. The importance of news in common principle that determines how media outlets give priority to the news story. The components of newsworthiness set the value of the news story. There are several news values in journalism, which are proximity, controversy, personal influence, stability, impact, bizarre, human interest, timeliness, progress, genuineness, completeness, and negativeness. So, while covering a information or a news, a journalist should be aware of these news values, which actually creates a news worthiness. So, journalist weighs news values when determining whether to cover an event or announcement. Here are the news values that we consider when developing an outreach strategy. So, first is timeliness, proximity, impact, prominence, oddity, novelty or newness, magnitude, conflict. So, first of all, we are going to discuss timeliness. What is timeliness in news values? So timeliness in journalism means providing information to the audience quickly. The quicker the news is published, the more information getting to the audience. Journalists want to publish news as soon as possible to increase the corporate reputation of the media outlet. The audience gives more values to the mass media outlet that actually communicate or disseminate the news first. Timeliness is an occasion that enhances the values of the news. People do not like to read the same news repeatedly. So, news outlets show actually interesting news and in disseminating information as soon as possible. It is related to the current and ongoing events. For example, many newspaper publish news regarding Olympic issues when the event is continuing. Newspaper will not be interested in disseminating information related to the Olympic Games when the event is already ended. So, newness or the on time information should be provided by the journalist. So, timeliness means freshness in news. Recent events have higher news values than earlier happenings. If you are providing breaking news instantly, so it has a worth. For example, if Pakistan won cricket match with India and you are publishing that news after 2 days, so there will be no timeliness in that particular news. Our next value is proximity. Proximity means closeness to home. Stories about events and situations in one's home community are more effective or more worthy than events that take place far away. For example, if 100 people died in a bus crash in your city, so obviously people concerned with that news, while the same kind of incident happened in Iran, nobody will be interested in particular news. So proximity basically means proximity refers to the area of the event where the incident takes place. It also indicates the location of the event where that particular event has happened. Proximity is one of the significant news values in the journalism. The proximity or location of the news event affect the value of the news. The closer the place is, the more interesting in reading the information is. The reader feel more excited to read the news story if that occurs near to them. So proximity affects newsworthiness positively. Hence, it has a significant element of newsworthiness. So next value is impact. The number of the people whose lives will be influenced in some way by the subject of the story. The impact of the story quickly establishes the importance of the piece of the reader or piece of the news that affect the readers and the consequences for the readers themselves. For example, the Asian tsunami will create more impact than the local flood. So news values, the impact of the news is very important. Impact refers to the physical influence of the news writing on a large audience. The impact affect the value of the news significantly to attract the audiences. The more people engaged in news, add more important the topic is. For example, one more example is the COVID-19 pandemic has been the most relevant issue to attract people to read any updated news related to that particular topic. So next is magnitude. Magnitude means the quantity of news depend a lot in news. Event whose number of people involved in of paramount importance and whose impact concern a great number of people have magnitude. For example, if 5 students protest against the framing of roads outside an educational institution, so it means that there is a magnitude in that particular news. Next value is prominence. What happened to important people makes news. The value of the news increases with the prominence of person involved in that particular news. If we take an example of former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's assassination that made the world headlines, but the murder of village head may be carried out only in local newspaper. What prominent people say is also a grist of a reporter's mill, particularly if they make some announcement which have an impact on the common people. So, for the same occurrence, people in the public eye have higher news values than obscure people. One more example is if Mahira Khan has cancer, so this news gives values, while an ordinary cancer patient would not have commanded the attention of that particular information or a news. Next value is novelty. Novelty means any interesting fact or uniqueness in a story which you do not hear even before or prior to that particular information. It means now unusual is the subject of your story. It should not be very common subject. It should be uncommon or surprising element or and another value or we can say this means that something is new, strange or surprising. If news is boring, nobody will be interested in reading it. So attract readers. Headlines and stories are often included in the news or stories. And the last one is conflict. It is one of the most important in the news element. It is inherent in nearly all the news of sports, war, crime, violence and internal disputes, and in all stories involving difference of opinion. Generally, the news of conflict also involves other news values as drama and oddity, and therefore has an emotional impact, a factor that appeals to many people. Many types of stories have conflicts as their underlying element, the struggle against odd. Here are some of these type. Man's struggle with nature, struggle between individual and organized society, struggle between political and economical groups, that is war, campaign, strikes. So basically conflicts, people gather in a street, and if when there is a fight, conflicts of all are part of our life and make a good copy. So that is also one of the very major news values of the news worthiness. So that's all for today. Thank you so much.